The Department of Homeland Security's social media team appears to be running a contest to see just how much white power propaganda they can put out before we start making noise. Well, I'm Brittany Page, and this is the Page Perspective, and I'm here to make noise. I don't talk about it frequently, and in fact, I've only spoken about it at length in public twice, but I was raised in the white power movement. And when I bring this up, I wish I could show you photos of me as a kid in front of the swastika flag, hanging in my garage, or at Aryan Nations. But I'm not ready to give up ownership of these photos, which is what will happen when I finally do put them online. But one of the times I've spoken at length about this in public was on a podcast called Embrace the Void. So I will link to that if you want to check it out. But I only start with this so that when I tell you, seeing these social media posts from the Department of Homeland Security is something that takes me right back to my childhood indoctrination. You understand what I mean. I mean, they are posting 14 words and double capital H's. And if you don't know what that means, we're going to get to it. One of the things about people who are in the white power movement is that they know their views are unpopular, unsavory, not accepted by society at large. And they spend a great deal of time thinking about how to get around this problem in order to recruit more people. So they like when people like Richard Spencer have the clean-cut, everyday man look, or when the ideas that people would normally associate with people who are poor white trash are adopted by the people wearing suits and heading into the Heritage Foundation every day. And just as an aside, there's a protest at the Heritage Foundation here in DC every Monday at 4 p.m. where you can call the Nazis Nazis. They want to take their little hateful worldviews and package them up in such a way that the average Joe can tell themselves, this isn't hateful. This is just the way the world works. This is reality. So they can feel more comfortable with their hateful and wrong worldviews. And so it's no surprise that in the social media posts from the Department of Homeland Security, where they are endlessly recruiting for ICE, that they are adding explicitly white power activist messages. And I would say that these started subtle. The average person who isn't steeped in this wouldn't necessarily recognize it, especially if they're white and have done zero work whatsoever on their racist attitudes. But it's getting to the point where they might as well just post white power, join ICE. Don't believe me? Stay tuned and we'll see what you think by the end of this video. And if you learn something from this video, please share it. We'll start easy, okay? We'll start with this. This was posted on August 5th. Serve your country, defend your culture, no undergraduate degree required, join.ice.gov. Setting aside the no undergraduate degree required, setting aside that they are now offering student loan forgiveness to newly recruited ICE agents, we're focusing on defend your culture. How much more clear could this be? We know what they're saying when they post this. It's the same thing the Trump administration has called for repeatedly when they attack so-called DEI. The Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, surely had defending culture in mind when he decided to authorize the removal of tens of thousands of photos from a database, focusing on milestone achievements for Black and Hispanic people, or when he fired high-ranking officials who also happen to be people of color, and yes, women, of course, but the real signal here is about race. I mean, Donald Trump is now directing a review of the museums in DC to ensure, quote, museums align with the president's interpretation of American history. There are signs of this everywhere from the right wing. They love to seize on hot topics and make them into culture war fodder. You remember the Sydney Sweeney ad? How gleeful conservatives were to talk about how she really does have nice genes. How they rush to social media to post about her, like this one from Megyn Kelly, quote, a beautiful white blonde girl with blue eyes. Or J.D. Vance calling her a normal, all-American girl.
Which is that you have like a normal, all-American beautiful girl doing like a normal jeans ad.
From the same people who go into cardiac arrest when Beyonce performs at the Super Bowl, or they hear Lift Every Voice and Sing, otherwise known as the Black National Anthem. And wouldn't you know it, the same week that the Sweeney ad came out, Beyonce had a new Levi's ad, one that Megan did not find to be representative of beauty. I wonder what the difference is. What could it be? She said Beyonce's ad screams fake and artificial. Some argued in the comments it's the blonde hair. Check Sydney's roots, you guys. Check Megan's roots and her extensions. Check my roots, by the way. Megyn Kelly, of course, being most famous for losing her dream daytime talk show job after defending blackface, is a reasonable and enjoyable hobby for people to have, and reassuring children on Fox News that Santa is white, not black. These are all examples of defending your culture. This is the kind of stuff that I say is kind of just regular Uncle Gary racism, the kind of casual racism white people hear at their holiday gathering when their racist family members start saying things that, ruin the holiday fun times. And all racism is racism. But I think a lot of white people try to place distance between your regular Uncle Gary holiday gathering racism and like going to Aryan nations racism. And they should stop doing that, because that's how we get Megyn Kelly having the platform that she does now. That's how we get Donald Trump as president right now. It's all the same. There's no polite or acceptable amount of racism, and all of it should aggressively be chased out of our society. Some people act like the worst thing that can happen is calling someone a racist, when it's actually being a racist that's the problem. We can't call everything Nazi. What about the Nazis? Can we call them Nazis? Okay, so this defend your culture thing is starting easy. What about this? Quote, a heritage to be proud of, a homeland worth defending, American Progress, John Gast. Featuring a photo of the aforementioned painting, which is a visual representation of manifest destiny. Manifest destiny being the idea that it was the duty of the noble settlers who arrived to the promised land to expand to the west through force, including murdering indigenous people, including genocide, that this was destined, that it was justified. In the painting, we see a white, glowing woman carrying a book of enlightenment in one hand and a telegraph in the other hand as natives flee. And let's read this description of the painting. Quote, she carries a school book, testimonial of the national enlightenment, while with her left, she trails the slender wires of the telegraph that will bind the nation. Fleeing her approach are Indians, buffalo, wild horses, bears, and other game, disappearing into the storm and waves of the Pacific Ocean. They flee the wondrous vision. The star is too much for them. Well, that's certainly one way to summarize a genocidal painting, promoted by a federal agency recruiting people to disappear non-white people from the streets. But that's not all. You may notice that in this post, there are two capital H's, heritage and homeland. Any white power activist would recognize this as the HH, as in Hail Hitler, also denoted as a double 8, meaning the 8th letter of the alphabet. And what about the number of words in the post? If you count them up, that's 14 words. The 14 words refers to a white power slogan created by a prominent white supremacist terrorist, David Lane. The slogan is, quote, we must secure the existence of our people and a future for white children. Sounds a lot like defending your culture. Am I right? What's notable about these two things together, the 14 words and the double HH, is that 1488 is a common white power symbol. You see white supremacists with 1488 tattoos for this reason. So what? This is all a coincidence? No, it's not. And we shouldn't be giving cover to Nazis by giving them the benefit of the doubt. But okay, maybe you think this is a one-off. The defending culture and the 14 words and the Hail Hitler reference might be a coincidence, you say. Let's do one more and see what you think. Which way, American man? This one features another photo, this time of Uncle Sam standing at a crossroads with words denoting which direction to go. At the top, we see cultural decline. And I wonder what cultural decline means to DHS. We also see Homeland, service, invasion, and opportunity, while law and order is removed and in Uncle Sam's hand. Now, this one went above my pay grade, so we're going to use this article from Slate's Molly Olmstead, who takes us through the meaning here. Quote, "The truly notable part of this post, however, is in its caption. Which way, American man? Which Way, Western Man is the title of the 1978 book by the white nationalist William Gailey Simpson. The book promoted the classic conspiracy theory about Jewish cabals in control of global institutions, and it supported eugenics, segregation, and the deportation of Jews. It seems hard to ignore the direct connection to white nationalism in the DHS post, given its mention of cultural decline, a term often used by white nationalists to lament non-white and non-European influences on American society. And given that the subject is ultimately recruitment for an anti-immigrant project." Yeah, it seems hard to ignore indeed. So don't ignore it. Believe these repeated instances of explicit white power propaganda and call it what it is. DHS has responded saying everything we dislike can't be called Nazi propaganda. But what about Nazi propaganda? Can we call Nazi propaganda Nazi propaganda? Yes, and we should. There's this thing that I've noticed in some people who call themselves progressive, whether political commentators or politicians, some who call themselves progressive will simultaneously cede ground to the radical right wing on issues like trans rights, race, DEI, giving credence to the argument that woke has gone too far, when it's very obvious that if we take a look around, woke hasn't gone far enough because far too many people are still asleep. I'll just say it plainly. If you come across someone who calls themselves progressive and they cede ground to the right wing, they need to be called out. They say woke has gone too far in some cases. Which cases? Some anti-trans activists have a point. Which point? Expose their conservative sensibilities so we can at least all be on the same page here and not have people masquerading as part of the cause when they're not. And this isn't about purity. This is about knowing what we're working with here. Any effort to assist the right wing gets us where we are now, with an authoritarian takeover, with a federal agency posting explicit Nazi propaganda to aid in recruiting for their organization that is disappearing and abusing non-white people on the streets. So it matters very much that we know what we're working with here. This regime doesn't need the aid of people calling themselves progressive, giving the fascists cover. If you're white, use your privilege for good and call racism out every time you hear it. Speak plainly about what we're seeing and fight back. First they came for. We all know what comes next, right? What do you think? Call and leave me a fewer than 3-minute voicemail at 202-656-1509 or send an email to info@thepageperspective.com. You can support my work by becoming a channel member by clicking the join button for as little as $1.99 a month or by going to patreon.com/IDoubtItPodcast. Follow me on social media at Brittany E. Page everywhere but, you guessed it, the Nazi one, Elon's Nazi website. As always, thank you so much for being here. Take care, and I'll see you next time.